OldGuyTalks.com is all about being a better man. Join me on this kick-ass journey. Exclusive stuff for members only in the Old Guy Cave. Opt in now. OldGuyTalks.com. If you have not already opted in, do so now. You're going to get my three ways of how to get laid more frequently without begging. You don't have to give up your personal dignity. You don't have to turn in your man card. You can get it all done, and I can help you do that and save you the embarrassment of being there on your knees begging for sex. So that's all I got. So tonight, folks, we have in the house Jim Clark, owner of Republic Monetary Exchange. Jim has been in the gold business since 1973. And that's a long time, Jim. That's a long time. And so I want to find out a little bit more about what it is about gold and what makes it all so special. But before we do that, Sue, the IP lawyer babe, wants me always to read this disclaimer. And this is not the way she would have written it, but she said this will work. This is information only. Consult with an appropriate professional before starting any program. Do not be stupid. You are responsible for your own shit. The old guy is a capitalist and not a socialist weasel. He will be promoting stuff here and other places and may be compensated. You rest assured that the old guy only promotes stuff he uses. You will have different results. Without a doubt, we all get different results. So with that, this bit of legal ease gone by, Jim, welcome. Welcome to OldGuyTalks.com.
It's great to be here with you, Orst. And you failed to tell your audience, so I'm going to go ahead and share it with them. That we got reconnected about, I think like about 5 or 6 years ago at the gym where we both work out, and come to find out that we both were in Boy Scouts together as kids. So when you say 1973 is when I got in the business, yes, that's true. So we're essentially the same age. So you know what it was like back then, and this is all I know. And I have a great passion for the gold business, and why 45 years into it, I'm still with it, and I love it just as much now as I ever did.
Yeah. Well, that was I guess that was a Boy Scout troop kind of in name only, because there were some things that, well, you can't do them in 2018.
Oh, hell no, you can't.
Like, I think every meeting there was several felonies by today's standards that had taken place. So,
well, I guess there's one thing that we could say that they're doing now that raises a question. I was reading yesterday, several thousand girls have joined the Boy Scouts. Well, we never had such luck when we were kids.
No, actually, that would have driven membership up. But that is it's not the Boy Scouts. It's the, well, whatever you want to call it these days.
Person Scouts.
Person Scouts. Here we go. Person Scouts. Jim, let's getting into gold here. How is the value of gold determined? What goes into the process?
It's a very interesting question, and I'm going to give you somewhat of a long answer to that short but yet simple question. Is for over 6,000 years that we know of in recorded history, gold has been the one ultimate currency that has withstood anything and everything and every type of economic disaster, currency collapse. It was the only thing standing as countries collapsed around the world. So the value is determined by what people will get for their goods and services when exchanging for gold. For instance, the price of gold is $1,325 per ounce, roughly. Mm-hmm. Well, an ounce of gold, what it'll do today, it did the same thing 100 years ago, whether they buy a suit of clothes and a top hat and a pair of shoes and shirt and tie, figure about $1,400, go into most men's store, that's what it's going to cost. Well, 100 years ago, you could have done the same thing, that you would have with a $20 gold piece, basically, you could buy a suit of clothes. So that same $20 gold piece that today is worth around $1,400, it did the same thing back in in the early 1900s. My grandfather told the story when I was a very young boy that in 1927 he bought a Model T Ford for $400, and he used $20 gold pieces to make the transaction. So those same $20 gold pieces that bought a Model T Ford in 1927 will buy essentially a brand new Ford today, meaning say $28,000 will buy a pretty decent car. At the time of Jesus, even 2,000 years ago, an ounce of gold would have bought a tilma, a pair of sandals, a walking stick, a hat, basically suit up a man for an ounce of gold.
Mm-hmm.
And much could be said the same thing about silver, that a silver quarter when we were in high school and buying a gallon of gas was about 25 cents a gallon, maybe 30 cents a gallon. And essentially a silver quarter minted in 1964, which contains silver, would have bought that same gallon of gas. That silver quarter today, the value of it, of about $2.75 to $3 for a silver quarter, will do the same thing, buy a gallon of gas. So it's the value is determined by the medium of exchange used to transact the business. So in all of my years and everything that I've ever read, the value of gold doesn't change. The price changes because the value of the dollar or the value of any currency for that matter fluctuates, and causing the price of gold also to fluctuate. You know, we're in a very interesting period in history right now where we have a dollar that has dropped about 12 to 13% in the last year. And coincidentally, and not so coincidentally, the price of gold has also gone up about 13%. So as the value of the dollar erodes, then the price of gold goes up, and you have that constant change, that constant fluctuation of up and down based on the value of the currency used.
Mm-hmm. We talked about the connection to what we could buy in the past. Could you go into a little bit more about what drives the value up and down? What makes that, I think the high was a few years ago at about 1900. Is that correct? And
yeah.
Maybe like I'm looking at a chart here, and in 2001 it was like $300 or something like that for an ounce. And it seems actually for a long time, actually since the 21st century, seems to have just kind of gone up for a long time. Now it's went down a little bit, but now it's kind of rebounding. So what drives the value of gold up?
Well, remember the value is
or the value doesn't change.
The price changes. It's strength of the dollar. It's interest rates. As interest rates go up, the price of gold tends to go up with interest rates. So we've had very low interest rates over the past few years, about 8 years. We've had very low rates, and we've had a very low gold price really over the last 6 years. It got up to 1,900, and it's gotten as low as about 1,050 a few years ago. And as the dollar has started getting weaker, especially in the last year and a half, the price of it goes up in relationship to the value of the dollar. But there's other things too that fear and greed tend to drive the price of gold too. That there's a sense that other markets like the stock market, which I believe has peaked at 26,000. And now we've been plus or minus 24,000 for the past several weeks. As one area of investments start looking not as attractive, money starts flowing into other markets, whether that be the oil market, whether it be in the commodity market in general, whether it be in silver and gold. But if there's a fear of an economic collapse, if there's a fear of dollar devaluation, all of those things that drive the price of gold, if that enters the market, the fear is the first thing that gets it going. And then greed plays a part in it too, that, I better buy gold now at 13 and a quarter because pretty soon it's going to be 15 and a quarter and 16 and a quarter and maybe $2,000 an ounce. So there's a sense that they just want it. And I think the best example I've seen in a long time of fear and greed chasing something was the Bitcoin. When it went from basically pennies on the dollar to over $19,000 for a Bitcoin. And most people you talk to don't even know what it is. It's like a brand new currency that, has been created in the digital world, has no track record. And I thought it was a scam all along. Now, could I have made money? Sure, I could have. And I didn't get involved in it. And it's been a wild roller coaster ride for the past year or two. And I know a lot of people have made a lot of money, and I know a lot of people that have lost an enormous amount of money getting on that bandwagon, whereas gold has a proven track record of 6,000 years. The Bitcoin has a track record of about 9 or 10 years. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go with the thing that has got a proven track record over time. It's stood the test of time and has held value. Gold has never been worthless. And if you take currencies that have essentially just collapsed in value, the Venezuela currency, for example, the price of gold goes up 5 or 10% a day in Venezuela money. Although you can't get any gold in Venezuela, but you get the point. So
Yeah.
as the value of the currency moves down, the price of gold moves up, and conversely, the opposite is true too.
Yeah. Kind of along the lines of what you were just saying. Can you talk about how different people use gold as an investment versus as protection? What are the concepts behind that?
Well, the investment part of it, as I've always believed, would be investment grade coins, meaning coins that were U.S. made, that have been certified as genuine, and then guaranteed to be a particular grade. And that grading standard is called MS, and that's the acronym for Mint State. Anything Mint State 60 and above, which goes to the maximum number, is 70. Although in the investment grade gold, the highest number I've ever seen or ever heard of is Mint State 68. So the lowest in uncirculated is Mint State 60. We typically recommend Mint State 63, Mint State 64, or 65. And the higher that number gets, the more valuable the coin is, and the price goes up accordingly. And these are coins that haven't been around for 100 years. The last, basically the early 1900s, the last year for gold, U.S. gold production was 1933. Mm-hmm. So 85 to 120 years old, basically, what we're talking about. Coins that, when those are gone, they're gone, and they stay gone. Mm-hmm. And in 2011 and 12, one of the things that we saw was the hedge funds bought tens of millions of dollars worth of these investment grade gold coins. Uh-huh. And they ran the premiums up to where many of them were, 2 and 3 times the price of gold itself. And they unloaded them in the last 4 or 5 years, and the premiums have come down. We're typically right now sitting at a 20-year low on the premium relative to the price of gold. I think this is the most attractive time that I've seen in most of the years that I've been in the business, to be getting the investment grade gold. And not only that, it's with the investment grade gold, they are non-confiscatable, which is a whole nother topic I hope we can get into.
Okay.
That in 1933, Roosevelt confiscated the gold, by an executive decree, saying you have, I think it was about 3 months to turn in your gold, and every ounce of gold you get $20 for it. And a lot of people turned in their gold. They didn't have to turn in the $20 gold pieces that were coins of the realm, but that would be nuggets, bars, flakes, whatever it might be. They'd had to turn it in, and if not, you could be imprisoned or fined up to $10,000. So the coins that were exempt were the investment grade, as we know them today, the $20 gold pieces, $10, $5, $2.50 gold pieces that we know is the investment grade gold today. They were exempt from confiscation. However, bullion type coins, Krugerrands, Maple Leafs, which weren't around at the time, but any coin that didn't have a utilitarian purpose or didn't have a collectible value was confiscated and you had to turn it in. I believe that could happen again. I don't know that it's going to happen on Trump's watch, but sometime in our lifetime, Orest, I think we're going to see gold confiscated again by a future administration. Probably not Trump, but at some point that's coming around again. And I think the values for gold are the best that I've seen right now relative to gold in many, many years.
Yeah, the confiscation thing was I'd heard about it, but I wasn't really very familiar with it. When you start talking about the grading, the grading of the coins from a 62 to going up, what makes it go up?
Well, there's 2 grading services that we recognize in the trade. That's a company called Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, or NGC. The other one is Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS. And they have coin experts, coin graders. That's all they do. These companies, they only grade coins. they put them in a hard plastic tamper-proof holder that once it's broken, now you can't just open it up and seal it back up again. If you open it up, it stays open. But it's in these holders that there'll be 5 graders that will sit around and have a blind study of what the coin will be, and they will all put a number together, and they will give that coin a grade, and then they'll seal it up. They have to agree, and the number that they agree on is the lowest common denominator. So if one of the 5 graders calls it a mint state 63, another one says a 64, and another one says 63, and another one says 63, and one says 64, and goes back to 63, then the coin is a 63. So the majority rules on the conservative end. So once it's in the tamper-proof holder, and in that case, and then it has a barcode that can be verified on their website that is indeed that particular coin that was graded on a certain date, and this was the grade, so you know that everything about it is genuine. Once it's in that holder, in the tamper-proof plastic holder, end of story. That they trade sight unseen for the most part, and that once it's a mint state 63, it'll be that grade forever. So it's a disinterested third party, the grading service, that determines the value of the coin.
Mm-hmm. In a coin
the grading of the coin, not the value.
Not the value. In a grading system in a system like that, how does the actual amount of gold in that coin compare to, let's say, for the actual amount of gold? Let's say there was, I'm just talking about, let's say there was an ounce of gold in that coin, and there's an ounce of gold that costs a certain amount. How much would that coin be? What would be the value of that coin as compared to an ounce of just a piece of gold?
Okay, so I think I understand your question. At a coin that's minted just for the purpose of its gold content, that would be a currently minted gold coin, like an American Eagle or a Canadian Maple Leaf, coins of that. They typically will sell for 5 to 7% above the gold content, or above the gold price. So a 1 ounce American Gold Eagle with gold at $13.25 would be plus or minus $1,400 a coin. An American Gold mint state 63 $20 gold piece, because it's going to be 100 years old plus or minus, it's going to have a value of about $1,700 for the coin. Okay. So you're paying for rare coin value, you're paying for a graded coin, and also the age of the coin and the authentication and the grading itself.
Okay.
So there could be anywhere from 5 to 30 or 40% more for investment grade gold.
Okay. All right. So we're kind of touching upon my next question I was going to ask you here. What are the different ways to own gold, and what are the options in terms of storing gold? Because what are investors and people that own gold doing? How are they choosing to basically have that gold, and how are they choosing to store it?
Well, I don't like to know where people keep their gold, but when they ask me for ideas of what's the
we're not going to be mentioning any addresses here, are we?
Yeah. Well, I've always liked the idea of keeping it close to you. I don't think having it in a Swiss bank somewhere and having a lot of water in between you and your gold is such a good idea. Some banks won't allow you to place bullion type gold, the American Eagles, because it doesn't have a collector's value. And I'm talking about Chase in particular. You could not store American Gold Eagles there, but you could store investment grade gold, because that's private property, and that it's outside of what they consider to be a cash equivalent. And a lot of banks and institutions look at gold bullion coins as being cash equivalent, and people, and then the hoarders of gold, and it just has that dark cloud over it. As and you know what it's like today. You walk into the bank with $10,000 worth of cash, $10,000 in cash. They want to know everything about it. They want to know the history of it. They want to bring the manager over. Where did you get this? What's the source of it? Well, they treat gold bullion coins somewhat the same way as cash equivalent. Investment grade gold has a whole different category that people are buying them for the collector value, the aesthetic beauty of a coin, the rarity, the heirloom factor comes in if there's something they want to pass on to their kids, or that it was passed on to them by their own parents. So as far as storing it, I like the idea of a good strong safe, whether that be a floor safe, not a gun safe, but something that's got a lot of weight to it and would take a long time to break into if you came with the right equipment. But not so strong that if you forget the combination that, you know, a safe company couldn't open it up. And we actually have a safe company that we recommend that, you know, for those needs. And if some people have gotten creative, they've gotten that big PVC pipe that you can get at Home Depot or someplace, 6 or 8 inch PVC pipe, and put their coins in there, and put the PVC glue on it, and buried it in their backyard. And I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I don't know how many people have done any of those things, but I throw that out to them as a possibility of a safe place. And typically, I like to say, just get creative. You'll figure it out.
Sure. There comes a point where some people choose to convert their gold to cash, and if somebody's going to do that, what should they take into consideration?
Well, with the investment grade gold, it's not the transaction is non. It's a non-reportable transaction in the sense that if you walk in with a handful of coins and want to sell them for cash, it's a very simple transaction to do. Typically, we like to just issue a check, and once we verify the coins and what they are, bring them in. We look at them, evaluate them. I show people how to evaluate that, and one of my claims to fame is that I have dozens and dozens of clients that I've worked with over time that have written raving reviews on Google and Facebook, and
I saw those.
That they say when we come see Jim Clark, he makes the transaction so easy, and it is easy. And when you have 45 years experience in this, there's nothing new under the sun for me. I've heard all the stories. I've dealt with third generation investments, gold and silver investments coming in where a couple may have bought and then they pass it on to their kids, and then they pass it on to their kids. And I've seen third generations. Yes, my grandparents bought these from you 40 years ago, and here I am with them, and I've cashed them in, and they went on about their business, and I went out about mine, and I want people when they've come into our place and they deal with us, I don't want them to leave with any doubt in their mind that they didn't get hoodwinked, and that here's I can show on the internet how coins are valued, and that whether it be from a previous auction, whether it be from what they traded at dealer to dealer, what they traded at, what we paid for the last ones, and we've got historical records on all of that. Mm-hmm. And it all makes sense. And that when somebody leaves here, they should be a lot smarter than when they got here. And that goes whether they're buying or selling, that they have to understand the concept and not leave here thinking, and get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, did I make the right decision? I'm hoping that 99% of their answers or questions can be answered by the time they leave here, if not 100%. So that they fully understand we're not revisiting, now why did I buy this gold again? And then they fully understand. So it's a simple process for me, but it's not a it shouldn't be too complicated at the end of the day for the clients.
Sure. Can you get gold into your IRA?
You can, which is really cool. And there's ways that we can explain how that's done. It's we typically recommend that you use your IRA and you set up a limited liability company, and limited liability companies can invest in whatever it wants to. And we can show how investment grade gold can be placed in an IRA. And I think that's a very smart thing to do. And then there's no tax on it until you take a distribution. So just like any traditional IRA, whatever amount of money you want to put into it, you can. And at the time of either liquidation or the time of distribution is when the tax is due. Now, you got to remember too that if you're holding the coins and not being held at a depository, you're responsible for them. You can't say, "Well, I got hit in the head on the way to the bank when I was going to put them away, and I want to just write it off." No, it doesn't work that way. That you're responsible for whatever happens to those coins, whatever, as would be with anything else too.
Okay. And you mentioned something about the depository is another way in an IRA to hold gold.
Yeah, there's a handful of depositories around the country that people don't want to be bothered with it. We can ship it right to the depository, and we use a company in Albuquerque, SunWest Trust, that prepares all the documentation and sends it out to you. And every year you pay a small fee for them to continue to be your custodian. And they have multiple depositories that we can send the gold to for you.
Okay. How does, from your perspective, is there any advantages or disadvantages to owning stock in companies that mine gold versus actually the gold itself? What's your perspective on that? What's been your...
Well, my experience has been in a rising stock market, gold mining companies will do well because stocks in general are in, the old rule about, in a rising tide, all ships are raised, and in a lowering tide, all ships are lowered. I think this holds true for gold stock companies as well. Now, where gold stock companies do exceptionally well is when the price of gold is very high. Right now, the gold price is just slightly above the production cost, and that's estimated to be around $1,275 to $1,300 an ounce just to get the gold out of the ground. So they're doing okay. Gold mining companies are doing okay, but they're not doing spectacular. But when stocks in general are moving up, they're going to do well too. Of recent times, gold stock companies have not done all that well, where gold's up 13% since last year. So the gold itself, the concept is entirely different than owning paper stocks. I believe that you should have gold in your hand, something you can look at. That's the tangible asset. It's private property. It's the real currency, and you've got it. You've got control of it. A gold stock company, you're relying on the honesty and the integrity and the performance of the companies. So the concept is entirely different than owning physical gold, where you take actual possession.
How much new gold is being mined, actually? Is there a lot of it, a little of it, or from historical perspective?
Well, they meant in the metric tons of gold every year. They mine metric tons of gold every year. Countries more accumulate gold than they do get rid of it. It's estimated that Russia has about 1,000 metric tons of gold, most of which was acquired in the last 10 years. England has an enormous amount of gold. India has, China. Their plan was they set out a plan about 6 or 7 years ago that in the next 10 years, they wanted to have 10,000 metric tons of gold. And they're on track to do just that. And the irony is that the amount of gold that's ever been mined in the world is relatively lower than what you would expect. The estimate is that if you were to take all the gold that was ever minted, whether it be worldwide since the in the last 6,000 years, and you were to put it in a big block, a cube, if you will, it would be 30 yards in a cube. That's it. Or another way to put it would be about the size of an Olympic pool. That's how much gold has been mined since we recorded history.
Wow, that doesn't seem like a lot at all. I mean,
that isn't that much. I mean, there's more in the ground, but a lot of the gold that they knew was there was near the surface. And what's down below, they got to dig a lot deeper to get the same amount of gold that they did even 20 or 30 years ago.
Okay.
So the amount of known gold in reachable form is going to be less and less, and the cost of mining gold will continue to rise. And if the value of the dollar continues to erode, which it's been doing more of than not, the cost of production is going to go up, whether it be equipment costs, whether it be the fuel fuel costs are doing. But the overall cost of going in with all the equipment, that's probably going to get pretty soon over $1,300 an ounce. And if we have a currency crisis going on at the same time, gold, in my opinion, could easily be, $2,000 or more again in the not too distant future.
Oh, okay. Well, certainly was just bumping up to that not that long ago. So you've probably heard a lot of people like, I was surprised by that. What have people find most surprising? What's your customers find most surprising about owning gold?
Most surprising, I think how little space it really takes to store gold. When they look at it and say, wow, that's, they look at a coin the size of smaller than a silver dollar and say, wow, that coin is $1,400 or $1,500. That doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it is. I mean, the value, it just takes up so little space. I think the beauty of gold is amazing too. And as we're talking about how little there is of it, and this is one of the things that money has to be, one of 5 things that it has to be money. And that is one, that it has to be rare. Well, gold is very rare. It has to be hard to come by. And gold is. I mean, at that kind of $1,300 an ounce to pull it out of the ground, it makes it has to have a utilitarian purpose. Mm-hmm. For instance, did you know in electronics, gold has been one of the best conductors that they've ever been able to come up with?
Sure. And
they can make in gold and how easily it is to be converted into conductible material. Mm-hmm. You could take an ounce of gold and you could stretch out an ounce of gold 35 miles. And that's how
I did not realize that. Wow.
That's how little you would need to be conductive. 35-mile strand of gold with 1 ounce.
With 1 ounce. That's incredible. Because I know that gold is used as a conductor in certainly some very high-tech military weapons like missiles and things like that, because of that, because of the space and the conductivity. But I didn't realize that you could get that much use out of that. So that's kind of interesting.
Which is also part of the attraction to gold, and what makes it valuable is because it has multiple uses of it. It's highly desired. We know for 6,000 years that gold has been the currency of choice, and has a constant intrinsic value to it. So these are the things that make gold money. It's so rare. Gold is rare. It has multiple uses. Has to have a desirability. Has to be able to have a perceived value, and something constant that we're looking at generationally. That they and countries have wanted gold in their reserves, and you see that across the world today. And that's been the one thing that has kept countries stable, is the amount of gold that they had in reserve, not the amount of paper money, not the amount of digital money that they might have, but the amount of gold is what determines really the strength of a nation.
Mm-hmm. And how is the obvious question is, how is the United States in terms of its gold reserves, and and the strength and its strength? What's your perception?
Um,
Or I should more. I'm going to rephrase that. I'm not going to talk about perception. Your informed opinion rather than perception.
I've said that again. I've what again? Like it's cut out there a second.
Instead of using the word perception, I'm changing it. My question to use the word informed opinion.
Informed opinion. I think gold's going to be around forever.
No, but I mean, as far as in the United States, what do you think the United States' situation in terms of its strength, in terms of the amount of gold that it actually has?
That's been a question that's been on my mind and been asking me 1,000 times, and my honest answer is I don't know, and neither do you.
No, I don't.
There's supposed to be several hundreds or thousands of metric tons of gold sitting in Fort Knox. Yet it hasn't. It's never been audited. And there's been times where good senators like Rand Paul, and before him his father Ron Paul, who served in the as a Texas congressman, they wanted to audit Fort Knox, and they won't let them in. Everything gets blocked, that they're not going to let them get in there and do it. That's supposedly where most of the United States gold is, in Fort Knox. But there's always that dark cloud saying, is it really there? Has it been sold before? Where is it? And how much is there? Is it real gold? Is it gold-plated tungsten? What is it? I don't know. But somehow the underlying market seems to have an answer for it. And I believe more than I don't believe that there's less gold than what we're led to believe is there. So my informed opinion is I don't know. My educated guess is there's not much in Fort Knox, or we would have been audited and everybody would have been cleared of it.
Sure. Okay. All right, Jim. Well, is there anything else that we have not covered in our talk today about gold that you think we might have missed or should cover?
Well, we covered so much in it. With all my years of experience in this, I do want to cover one thing with you. That one of probably the most interesting time that I've had in the business was in 1980.
Okay.
The Hunt brothers, Nelson Bunker Hunt and his brother Herbert. And you probably remember this or would have read about it or sometime.
Yeah, trying to corner the silver market.
Yeah. That's what we're led to believe. That's what they were doing. I was dealing with the Hunt brothers in those days. They were buying physical silver dimes, quarters, and half dollars that were minted 1964 and before, and we sold them a significant amount of coins at that time. They weren't trying to corner anything. They were wanting to acquire silver that they felt like silver, like many people do about gold. They had inherited about somewhere around $4 billion from their father, H.L. Hunt. And I should say inherited. They helped build the company, but they had an estimated net worth of about $4 billion. And that's when $1 billion was a lot of money. That, these guys today, the Buffetts of the world and, Bezos and all these guys, they dwarf, what the Hunts had. But they just had this idea that they thought the value of the dollar was going to continue to erode. Interest rates were on their way to 20% back then. And they just wanted to acquire as much silver as they possibly could. So they were using the commodity futures market, which is just one big gambling hall, buying up the 5,000-ounce silver contracts. And instead of rolling them forward, because these are paper contracts, that most 99% of those contracts, they just get rolled forward, or they get sold before the delivery takes place. They were wanting to take delivery of all this silver on these commodity futures contracts, and the silver wasn't there. It wasn't in the warehouses. And they didn't want to sell it at any price. So in about 8 to 10 months, they ran the price from $5 an ounce to $50. And then the exchange members came in and screwed their eyeballs out, plain and simple. They told the Hunt brothers they couldn't buy anymore, that the exchange members themselves, the board of governors for the futures, the commodity futures exchanges, I understood that they were selling short the silver market, and they had no way to cover, and they were losing tens or hundreds of millions of dollars as well as the refiners and big brokerage houses, and they had to put a stop to the Hunt brothers. And the way they did it is they changed the rules in the middle of the game, said you couldn't buy anymore, you could only sell, and nobody could buy anymore. So it turned sellers only. So they had to sell, and whatever price they could get it sold for, that's what they got. And the people that bought it were the people that had shorted the silver market, but they put so much pressure on it that the same people that had sold short in the market made tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars at the expense of the Hunt brothers. And they pretty much lost that fortune. Now, the one brother that wasn't part of that was, we heard the name Lamar Hunt, especially around Super Bowl time.
Right.
The trophy, that's their brother Lamar Hunt. It's the Lamar Hunt trophy that they give to the winner of the Super Bowl. He didn't want anything to do with the oil business, but he had his fortune that he'd worked with, and he'd bought the Kansas City Chiefs and other real estate investments, and he did exceptionally well outside of the oil business on his own. But it was just a fascinating story to see all this transpire right before our eyes when we're in constant contact with the Hunt brothers at the time and what they were doing with the physical silver and the coins, and it was all we could do to buy as much coins as they wanted to buy, and they were buying several millions of dollars worth of coins on a daily basis. And it's one of those stories that makes my career. And when I say on my website that I have traded more gold than most people in the United States, and I would say I'm probably in the top 10 traders, but I could be plus or minus, because I've been at this for so many years, 45 years. I know this business inside and out as well as anybody that I know. And I don't mean to brag. I just need to explain that this is what happens with a 45-year career, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a lawyer, there's things that you just know. And there's things that you've experienced that nobody else has. And that feeling never goes away. And I get goosebumps thinking about some of the days that we had with the Hunt brothers and the excitement with everything at that time. It was just a great story. And it's probably my most memorable time in the business is being involved in the Hunt brothers, with the Hunt brothers, when they were trying to, as history says, trying to corner the silver market. I don't think that was the case at all. That it was just a thing that, maybe that got a little bit greedy, and maybe they, but they made some horrific mistakes, and they went against the big boys, and they paid the price.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's a screenplay in there, Jim. I'm serious.
Yeah. I could tell you stories, and I had a seat on the exchange in New York at the COMEX, which at the time was in number 4 World Trade Center, which we had somebody using our seat at the time, also buying commodity futures contracts, which was part of our hedging operation, and for when we had to buy and we had to sell. So that was an exciting time too. I used to spend probably a dozen or 15 times I'd be in New York, and that was a great time too. I just love the city of New York, and it took me a little while to get used to it, but the more you're there, the more you really enjoy it. And the people there and the exchanges, they were fascinating. I just love it. Yeah.
Well, my feeling about New York is it's like Vegas, 3 days, 3 to 4 days, and then I'm ready to go. Well, Jim, that was very interesting. I'm serious. There's a screenplay in that whole Hunt brothers story that certainly would be very, very interesting in how that goes. And it reminds me of what was that movie about the guy that was doing the shorting in the real estate? What was the name of that movie? It was just a couple of years ago. Do you remember that movie?
I do remember that. I do. Oh,
the big. Was it called The Big Short?
It was something like that. Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah. So
it's interesting. Another thing I think about New York is, you remember the movie Trading Places? Yes.
Yeah.
It was had Dan
Aykroyd and
Dan Aykroyd was in it, and then
what's the comedian? Shit! I can picture his face, but I can't.
I can't think of his name. Don Amici was in it. is one of the brothers that were in the orange juice futures market.
Yeah.
And I was there in New York for, I think, about a week or 10 days. They were filming that movie at Comex in New York, at the actual pits where they trade orange juice in New York. Now, they did it after hours, and they had actors, and they were doing it. So they weren't actual trades going on, but it was fictitious trades happening after hours. But that was a fascinating thing to see all that going on too, and to be on the exchange when it's actually trading. And I would spend a lot of time there. And you know, at the time everything was open cry trade, buying 10 of these, and selling 5, and it was just one big pandemonium thing. But the floor traders could tune into what's being said, and they were buying. Yeah, okay, take 10, or sell you 5, whatever it might be. It was a fascinating thing. They do it a lot. It's a lot different now than what it was then. But to be an exchange member then, it was about. Have a seat on all the exchanges, which were at Comex. There were 4 different exchanges. It was about $1 million ticket to be a member back then. Now it's about $3 million for the same thing to be an exchange member.
Yeah. Eddie Murphy.
We'll have a few Eddie Murphy. Yeah, we'll have a few beers sometime, Orst, and we'll talk about the.
All right. I got about. I know we were talking about our time frame. I got about a few more questions, very quick.
Yeah.
The old guy is about virtues and vices, and so we've been talking about virtues, but I always like to get into vices that my guests have. So let me ask you, if you were to compete in an Olympic sport, what would that be?
Well, you mean if I could be good at it?
Yeah, or if you want to compete at something, what would be your choice to compete at?
I would. My choice now, at my age, is golf. I wish I was good enough at golf that I could compete in golf.
Oh, okay. What kind of music do you like to? What kind of music do you like to listen to?
I like old. I like stuff from the 50s and 60s and 70s, mainly 60s and 70s. I like classical music. I don't like any of the. I like some of the current stuff that doesn't get too crazy. I like some of the old bands, whether it be Simon and Garfunkel. I like those guys, and a bunch of others. Some of the Beatles stuff. I like. I really like Four Seasons. I go to when they come for their annual concert at the Celebrity Theater. I go to that, and I just like something that just makes you at ease. But loud rap music, forget about it.
Yeah. So if you are eating something bad that you don't want people to see you eating, what are you eating?
Let's see. I would say a greasy cheeseburger.
All right. Any place in particular you like to go for?
Where's really good is I like Zen Burger over at the Biltmore, and then I also like a place called Ingo's, which is right here in the neighborhood at 40th Street in Campbell. I like those, and put a little egg, put a fried egg on it, and at Zen Burger they put some bacon and an egg on it if you want. Yeah. So that's my junk food of choice.
Yeah, I like Lux at 32nd Street. Smoke cigars?
I do. Oh, I have I'm able to get some Havana cigars in, and just as you're doing right now, every time you take a puff of that, I'm thinking that if I were home right now, I would be taking a puff on my Cuban cigar, which I enjoy dearly every night, and along with a glass of wine.
All right, and so that was going to be my next thing. What kind of liquor? What kind of liquor do you like?
Well, my drink of choice is Manhattan. Crown Manhattan, shaken on the rocks. That's like my cocktail of choice. My wine of choice is Riesling. The sulfites in red wine tend to give me a headache, and Riesling's kind of sweet, and some people either like it or you don't like it. So I like Riesling because it's sort of a sweet drink, but at the same time, it's got just like a real mellow going down. And I like a beer once in a while, Coors Light or Coors Banquet beer once in a while.
Okay. All right. And what would someone be very surprised to find out that Jim Clark does? What? What would that what be?
Oh, I don't know. I live kind of a boring life. I don't know that. I don't know that I have any skeletons in my closet.
Oh, I don't know. See, whenever people say that, I always think that, okay, they're hiding something, but I guess
Yeah.
we'll have to maybe get to that in the
Maybe
executives.
you better check with my wife and see what she says. She might have a better answer for you.
All right. Well, Jim, thank you for coming on. I'll tell you that I learned a lot. I learned a lot
All
about
right.
gold, a lot of things that
Well, I
I
hope your
did not
audience did
know.
too.
We took some directions that I was not anticipating, and so there's a lot of facts, a lot of stuff that you able to share with our audience about gold and what makes it so unique. So I really appreciate it. So for now, this is Oris, the old guy from www.oldguytalks.com, signing off. And remember, it's all about creating a kick-ass life for yourself and those that you love. Until later.
Opt in and encourage other old guy assholes like you to opt in also.